Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and writers and editors and journalists and all different people who are putting things out from a news perspective. We also talk to artists and writers and people who put out books. And I say that advisedly because in our second segment, we have a Bronxite who has written a very interesting and dynamic collection of short stories. But we're going to get started with a young, bright, new journalist in the Bronx. He writes for the Mott Haven Herald, and I got a chance to meet him recently, and I'm thrilled that Jimmie Mckinney has joined us. Nice to see you, Jimmie.
Nice to see you, Gary. Thank you for having me.
Let just a little background. Let's introduce you to the people of the Bronx, where you're from, what interests you in journalism. Just tell us a little bit about what you've been doing.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm from Wilmington, North Carolina, born and raised there in the South. I came up here about a year ago to go to grad school. I'm at the CUNY Craig Newmark School of Journalism. And I was attracted to journalism because I'm a photographer. I did a lot of photojournalism. And prior to that, I did a lot of like art, photo art. And I was spending a lot of time making projects that I felt were introspective, and I wanted to tell real stories and use, the gifts that are the expertise I have with photo to be able to.
And then kind of expanded. Now that is very, I wasn't aware of that, and that's very interesting to me because I will tell you, and I haven't evaluated your photo work, but you're a good writer. Obviously, we've seen a lot of young writers in the Bronx, and you're right up there. I'd be curious to know, coming from Wilmington, North Carolina, what is it like coming to the borough of the Bronx? Like you said, you want to, tell stories about real life.
Yeah.
We got it. we it.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what it's been like to cover the borough of the Bronx.
It's been very exciting. One of the biggest things I realized about the Bronx is how much more organized it is, especially from a place where I'm coming from, where
Wow.
a lot of people and places are family oriented. You don't see much of non-related community, and so in the Bronx, to see people who are like very heavily invested in their community and want to see it better, and want to hold people accountable. They're doing a lot of work there in the Bronx, and that's something
Wow.
I'm used to see.
That's very interesting, and I love talking to people who come from other places because it gives us a fresh look at ourselves. And of course, we talk about this on BronxNet and on these programs all the time. The fact that the people of the Bronx, is like they ain't doing it for us; we're going to do it ourselves, and
Mhm.
we've had it. That's kind of like the attitude. Anyway, so let's get right to what you're writing about. Cannabis is coming. You did a very, very good investigative and thorough, informative story about the Cannabis Hub. I don't think people in the Bronx know what it is. What is the Cannabis Hub? And just tell us all about the things that you have written about.
Yeah, and so the Bronx Cannabis Hub is it's supposed to right now it's a virtual online center, and it's a place where those who are may have been priorly like convicted of a marijuana offense can then go and get the necessary resources, legal know-how, and just everything that they feel like they need so they can enter into the market once it's up and running. Come next year is what the Office of
Well,
Cannabis.
one of the agendas, which was stated by the governor, the mayor, and others who are moving this forward from a legislative point of view, is that they wanted to do just that and make sure that people who had been abused by the system or had difficulties with the system through being busted for pot and everything else, that they get a chance to benefit from it. And I just know from interviews I've done, legislators in the Bronx are very serious about that. I mean,
Yeah.
in other words, they're saying we're really going to do it. This would seem to me to be an example of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're trying to move with social equity definitely in mind. They want to make sure those who have been, the most impacted by over policing for cannabis, have a chance to have an opportunity at some form of generational wealth.
There's people with, I think, good reason jumping up and down and talking about tax benefits and talking about economic benefits and helping people make businesses and everything else. I don't hear a lot of talk about people, let's say, concerned about kids who have access, and I'm not talking about young kids, which is another issue, but teenagers going in. I'm sure we're going to get incidents of them going into school unable to really perform in school. Do you hear any of that undercurrent, or right now the dialogue is how to launch this thing and how to make it economically viable, and those kind of concerns, have not come to the fore yet?
Well, the system's going to be handled, much how alcohol is handled. You have to be 21 to have adult use cannabis, and so there shouldn't really be much of a situation where teens are involved. They're working in a way where they're making sure that it's enforced.
One of the things I was thinking about is New York, in some things, does a very good job at putting in systems. And if we're going to put it much like, whereas in other places in the country, maybe in North Carolina, they're a little more careless about some of these things. They don't have the governmental infrastructure to, run a subway system, for example, that kind of thing. Anyway, let's talk about something else. You wrote an interesting story about the St. Mary's Park. This
Yeah,
all comes out of the Mott Haven Herald, by the way. And St. Mary's Park, like some other parks, being renovated. But I think there was frustration about, number one, that it's closed in the summer. Sometimes you can't help that. But number two, that the community didn't know it. So there was no
yeah.
chance to prepare. Tell me a little bit about our wonderful St. Mary's Park down in the South Bronx.
Yeah. So the St. Mary's Park Rec Center is being renovated, and the community felt like they didn't actually get any notice on that, and so then you had a lot of kids, around a couple hundred kids, who rely on that rec center for summer programming, so they'll have something to do during summer, so they stay off the streets. And so they closed down the rec center without giving much of a notice. And since then, the park has, they put the needle boxes in the park. And then they've also been like recent crime in the park, and so it's not really a safe area for people to want to have their kids there during the summer.
So
Um,
Well, let me just interject and frame what you're saying. So, what could have been done is to go ahead of time, talk to community groups in the area and say, look, we're going to have an issue here because we're closing down a rec center. Is there other programs? Put a sign up on the door and say, beginning whatever it is, August 1st, you can go for programs in other places. And then, of course, have NYPD and others consult on how they want to set it up so they don't create more problems.
Yeah, essentially. And so now there isn't really any programming for the kids in the park. And even if there was, many families, many parents don't even feel like the park is that safe to have your kids in there.
Right. You see, this is not good. And if you don't have to editorialize. I'll do it for you. We can't have this. Right now with COVID and the kids have been cooped up and they need places to go. And especially in the very hot summertime, you want them outdoors doing healthful, productive activities. And just creating this creates a cauldron. And the next thing you're going to see, crime is going to go up and they're going to say, what's wrong, with our community. It's terrible. Do we hear of any result yet, or at this point it's just going and there's nobody helping out?
At this point, it's just going. I mean, the rec center is still closed, and there isn't really much programming going on in the park. It is what it is.
All right. Well, I was going to say to you, Jimmy, welcome to the Bronx. Now,
Yeah,
you get an education as well as anything else for all the nice things that you said about communities fighting for themselves. Now you see why they fight for themselves.
yeah,
Stuff happens like this, which just makes no sense. We have the infrastructure to do it. Anyway, that's just me and my attitude. Anyway, the last thing I want to bring up that you did write about, which we have done a lot of work on, is the redistricting. You focused on changes to Port Morris, Longwood, and those areas down there. Is there acceptance? Is your ear to the ground and you say there is acceptance for some of these changes that could be coming? Now, realize this was a draft and, there could be a further input. But what's your sense on that?
yeah. My sense is that there's been acceptance to the changes, although there has been a talk about engagement from the Bronx. They want more people living in the South Bronx to come and voice their opinions on what's going on and whether or not they like the maps or not. And so right now we're in the area where maybe we don't have as much engagement as we'd want or as they'd want. But the changes to the Bronx, since stripped Port Morris, or a section of Port Morris, and added it to the section where Mott Haven is. So that's Section 8.
So
Um,
that, yeah, Council District 8, just to be clear, it would move it, I guess, from Rafael Salamanca's district and put it in Councilmember Ayala's district. The only issue there is, are you splitting up cohesive communities and moving some people with things in common to somebody else's district? That's where that's the issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly see it more of as a consolidation. I think Mott Haven is now formed in a collection with Port Morris in a way that does bring the
That
community
makes sense.
together.
So you just editorially, you like this idea. You think that it will help. What we're going to do, we'll put the information up on the screen so that people will be able to know how they can have input, et cetera, et cetera. So, all right. So now we get to the part where I ask you, so what are you working on? What's coming up?
Yeah.
What's next? Let's get the inside. We got about a minute left. What's going on down in Mott Haven that we should know about?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I'm working on right now is on a story about evictions post moratorium. Since the eviction moratorium has ended, there's an expectation there's going to be a lot of eviction filings coming up, and a lot of maybe warrants going out as well. And so it's a hotbed issue. It's very important to the South Bronx with their high numbers of.
Oh my goodness! Do you have a sense yet of the numbers? The latest numbers I heard were something like 300, whereas and this is unofficial. I'm just remembering what somebody told me. Whereas, like a year ago or a couple of years ago at this time, it was 80. So that begins to be a lot.
Actually, at the moment, from the beginning of the year to July 25th, there's been over 17,000 filings.
Oh, 17,000. So here I am talking about 380. Ignore what I just said.
Yeah. There's
17,000 filings.
Yeah.
Now, this is what, listen, this is a whole other show. But this is what drives me nuts, is then people will complain about homelessness and homeless people in their neighborhoods and whatever else. But you're getting 17,000 families. Now, realize that's not individuals, that's families potentially who are being evicted. What are you going to do about this? This is obviously a really big problem. Well, Jimmie Mckinney, now people can find your stuff in the Mott Haven Herald, and then also the Hunts Point Express, because sometimes I know they share stuff, right?
Yeah. You can find it on Mott Haven Herald and on the Hunts Point.
And the Hunts Point Express. And so where are you in your education? You almost done?
Yeah, I'm almost done. I graduate this December. So
wow.
More months.
Are you going to stay here?
I'm going to try to.
Oh, yeah? Oh, good. I know that can be a sensitive topic. You're free to do whatever you like and get a good job. I mean, but you're obviously interested, and I think your work has been great. And I'm thrilled that we got a chance to chat with you on the Bronx Buzz.
Me too. It was great, Gary.
Great. Jimmie, let's stay in touch. I mean, this is one thing that people don't know. When you put media together and they work together, you also get better results for your community. And that's one of the things we're trying to do in the Bronx Buzz. So that's it. We're going to take a very short break. And then when we come back, we're going to meet Ana Ortiz, who wrote, here it is, I got it right here, a book of short stories, Los Cuentitos. We'll be right back. All right, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. I'm sure you agree with me. It was great to meet a, wonderful young reporter, and we wish Jimmy well in covering the Bronx. But right now, we are going to Los Cuentitos. There you can see it, and that is the new a book, the new book of short tales. It says right over there, a book of tales from Ana Ortiz, who is a Bronx author. Anna, so nice to have you with us on the program, and
Oh, thank you
congratulations
so
on the
much.
book.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be interviewed on your show.
Oh, sure. So let's just talk about you now. Frankly, until I read it on your little bio in the on the back of the book, I wasn't aware that you had had a 30-year career as a an attorney. Talk to me a little bit about you and what you've done before we got to Los Cuentitos.
Yeah, I graduated from Rutgers Law School in Newark, and um, I received the Reginald Haber Smith Fellowship. And my first job when I graduated from law school was working with the New York City Legal Aid Society
Uh huh.
in New York City Civil Court, representing tenants. I
Boy, I'll
I
tell you, there's probably a book in that. If you
Yes,
want to
there
tell us
is.
some stories, I'm sure there is.
Oh yeah, yeah, there is. Um, I um, I graduated and became a public interest lawyer. So I've worked with the New York Legal Aid Society as
Well,
a
so
consultant.
we don't need to go through every detail, but you've
Yeah.
had a long career in law, and you retired when?
I retired. I want to say almost 10 years ago.
Wow. And so then, at what point did you say, I ought to start writing?
Well, I've always liked writing. I was always interested in writing since I was very young.
Hmm.
So I won my first writing contest when I was in the fifth grade. I was 10 years old. Um, so throughout the years, I always used to write little things here and there, little stories or, anecdotes and then when I retired, I decided to pursue my interests because I've always wanted to do that.
And that's a wonderful thing for having dedicated your professional career for one thing, and then you have kind of this bug in you, and you really want to get to it. Now, this is your first work, first
Right. That is
official
my
work.
first. Yeah. Well,
Um,
I did have some short stories published before this
mhm.
on an online magazine, but
Right.
this is the
But
actual
really,
work.
this is it. These are they tell you a little bit about life. I saw one thing that had been put out. It said fiction never got so real.
Right.
Um, how let's see how many are there. There are numerous short, and they're like like eating chocolates. You could just eat
Yeah.
one and then you'll eat another because they're only
Right. Exactly.
2 or 3 pages long. Let's see, we've got a dozen different stories in here. um, Tell me about the creation of them. Were they Did you sit down every day and say, okay, now I'll do another one, or are these tales that you've had in your head for a long time?
Right. So some of them, they've been around for a while, and I finally sat down and dedicated some time to it and wrote the story. And others are just things that have just popped into my mind, and then I've said, "Oh," and I wonder, and I don't know. Once I get the idea, it just keeps flowing, and I just
Are
keep
they?
writing.
Are they? These are in some ways hard hitting. If you're looking for something that's going to make you say, "Oh, life is beautiful and
Right.
wonderful," that you're not going to get that here. But if you want to get to a reality that exists for many people, an untold reality,
Exactly.
then that is the way to do it. That is what you have done here. Um, Tell me a little bit about the creation of it. Did I'm always interested in an artist's muse. Did you sit down and say, okay, let me just pull out a title here and say, okay, how my mother lost her job? Did
Okay.
you?
So
Is it
so
based
so
on something, or did you just spit it out, or did you say, what
so let me
would be
let
if
me
that
tell you,
happened? Give
a
us
lot of
some of
these
the
a lot of
creation.
a lot of these stories um, are based on some events that have actually taken place. I mean, I've changed everything around, so it's not it's not the what actually happened. Um, but for example, how my mother lost her job was the person who was telling me how his mother lost his job. I said, "Oh my God, that's a great title for a story." You see
And you
how my
use
mother,
that as a way to kind of use
right,
your imagination, so to speak. But they're
right,
really based on a hard reality. And things, of course, because they're short, things move kind of quickly in them. Um, do, like, how long does it take to write one? You know,
all right.
I'm always tempted to ask.
Okay, okay. So
And in essence, we're saying how long did it take to put a dozen stories together to make this book?
okay, well, that took that book took, I want to say, from when I first got the idea till the actual publication day, it took 4 years.
Wow. And now this is self-published, which is an opportunity, right? Do I have that
No, it's
right?
not
No, it's
self-published.
not
It's published
self-published. I'm
by
so sorry.
L3, which is a publisher.
Hmm. And I'm curious about that, and then we're going to go back to some of the content. Is that is the process of turning your ideas and typing it out on a computer and then getting it to somebody? Is that a difficult process, or did you find like it had some flow and it had some logic? Because I hear all kinds of stories about people being rejected, and then somebody picked it up, and then then an editor says, "I'd rather have it this way." What was that process like for you?
Well, actually, what I used to do originally when I first started writing was I wasn't sure whether people would really be interested in the stories. So I started just showing the story to friends, people I knew, family, and everybody liked the stories. And they said to me, "Oh, you should really try to get this published." So at one point, I actually submitted my stories to this publisher, and she said to me, "These stories are great. You still need to work on them."
That's what I was
But
going to say. They always want to tell you what how they see it, but sometimes that critique is useful.
okay, well, uh,
Maybe
the
not.
only comment that she made at the end was, "It can't be this bad, Anna. Don't you have like a happy story?" She said-
You know, it did occur to me, and I did reference it earlier in this discussion. So, what was your response to that?
My response was, "In what world have you been living?"
Oh, very good. Very good. This is, ladies and gentlemen, a Bronx girl who knows what life is
Like, if
about,
you look
and that's
around,
a
like if you look around you, I mean, these stories are not far fetched. I mean, these
that's right.
like the incident with the bus that really did
Right.
there was a very similar incident on a bus like that. It didn't. I mean, I of course got the guy into a fight with somebody
Yeah,
else and
you embellished it. Yeah, I get that.
yeah. But no, I mean, I took it to, this is what could happen. This is what this kind of situation leads to.
Right.
And that's what I wanted to do. I didn't just want to write little stories that can entertain people and make people happy. I wanted to try to convey a message to my readers. And I think I've accomplished that with these
Uh,
stories.
Um, I could try and define what that message is. What is the message you want to communicate? So let's hear what you had to say
I want
without
people
me
to,
embarrassing
yeah.
myself
I
and
want
saying the
people
wrong
to
thing.
open their eyes and look around and see what's going on in our communities and see what's going on in our society and take responsibility for their actions.
Hmm.
That every single thing we do and say, as a matter of fact, every single thought we have has consequences.
Hmm. I was going to say that that it just captures a reality and is almost like a calling out for help. People in the Bronx understand that, and I talk about this all the time because people don't know how we live. People that's why
Right,
that publisher could say that to you
right,
without really understanding. Wait a minute, I never been to Burnside Avenue. I've never been, to Mott
right.
Haven. I've never been to, wherever, somewhere in the Crotona, and I've never really understood how people live and what they need to do to survive. Uh, as I mentioned, fiction never got so real. Um, do you do you like put this out and then say, okay, I'm done, I'm finished, or do you already? Because I know many writers and artists are creating still. Like that was the inspiration to do the next one, or are you not there yet?
I have. I actually am working on another story right now.
Hmm.
There's one on the back burner, and then there is even the possibility of a novella.
Are you considering something different or more in the same vein? You know, we find so many on this program and on BronxNet in general, so many Bronxites who just want to tell this story about who we are. Do you feel like all of this will be in that vein, or at some point you'll go out and you'll write about
For
something?
now, I think it's in the same vein.
Wow. Um, and I guess we've talked about the work. And by the way, the book is Los Cuentitos, and Ana Ortiz is the author. Um, and I talked to a lot of authors and other people about this. How does the borough of the Bronx and living in the Bronx and growing up in the Bronx, how does that inform your work? In other words, is it everything, or you know what I mean? What did you get out of knowing the Bronx and being able to write about it in this work?
Well, all of these stories come out of this community that I live here in the
Which
Bronx.
community is that, by the way?
I live in the Soundview Claxon Point area.
Okay, right.
I've lived here most of my life, since
Hmm.
I was 12 years old. I first went to live in the South Bronx when I was 7 years old, and then my mother, she bought this little house here in Classen Point, and this is where I grew up. And
Right.
so the stories come out of here, out of the people who lived here. A lot of these people, um, a lot of the characters are based on some of the people that live in this community.
That you know, or you made some kind of imagination about. Listen, we got to run. Ana Ortiz has put out her first book. Let's celebrate it. Let's buy it. Let's take a look at it. It's available wherever books are sold, I assume,
Um,
online and everywhere else.
you can get it online, Barnes and Nobles.
That's where
If
you
you
want to go.
if you just type in Los Cuentitos,
It'll come up. Yeah,
it will come
we
up.
got to run. I don't want to rush you, but we do got to run. Ana Ortiz, Los Quintitos. It's about our lives. It's about our communities. It's about what it's like to be in the Bronx. Um,
Okay, Gary, thank you so much.
Anna, thank you so much. And we'll see you around, and we'll certainly look for other stuff that you put out, and we'll try to give you an opportunity to come here on the Bronx Buzz.
As
That,
soon
ladies and
as
gentlemen,
soon
will
as
do it for our
I'll let you
program. And you know what's going to happen? I can tell you what's going to happen. We'll see you next week. Good night.